Teiho surrounded by group of hefty men, that one can easily mistake them as giants, shivers. Just as two men wonders what a strange name and clothes he has, and how tiny he is. Teiho seeing all these wonders how he got there, recalling how everything led to this point. Everyone was seen cheering, some holding banners bearing Teiho name. Teiho playing a game as he was on his way to win his third world championship, suddenly collapses and died. In his soul form, a bright light shone on him, opens his eyes to see a Valkyrie. Floating speaks to him as warrior whom has lost his life in a glorious combat, urges him to follow her. Teiho tensed up questions where, as he hopes she isn't referring to hell. Before he could say more, was grabbed by the arm and flown off in trail of rainbow colors. During flight Teiho was informed he was being taken to Valhalla. Getting to Valhalla wonders if it isn't the afterworld of the northern European mythology, place that warriors end up in. Looking over at the expression Valkyrie that brought him, confirms she mistook him for some great fighter. Tries to explain to her that he isn't actually a warrior, but someone that plays games for a living. Trying to understand what he's saying, a trumpet was blown. The Valkyrie turning shouts at the men to prepare for battle. Wears their armor, grabs their weapons, shouts out with rage, leaving Teiho terrified as he wonders what's going on. The rest running towards the approaching monsters engages them in a fight, as Teiho stands in the midst of them, sword in hand wondering what to do as he haven't even held a sword before. Glancing as a monster rapidly approaches him, luckily for him a man saves him, questioning if he knows what a saga is. Crouching and holding his head wonders what saga, prompting the man whom saved him to explain. Saga is the story in one's life here in Valhalla, meaning the more one's deed is spread far and wide in Valhalla, as more well-known a warrior is the stronger he becomes. Thinking of any of his achievements, sweat tickles down his face as he realizes he all did was eat and play games. But on recalling the character he played as a gamer, a blue interface lights up in front him, prompting the man who had saved him earlier to point out he actually has a saga, the proof being the blue text appearing in front of him. With more confidence lifts up his sword, with a smile on his face comments on how if he can use the power of the immortal warrior Karstedt, that would literally make him the strongest person in the world. Still in his dream world was called to the attention of the monster heading towards him, looking up spots a menacing-looking monster. Hits him throwing his sword off his hands as he manages to land on his 2 feet, questions if something is wrong with his saga, as Karstedt's power should have made a quick work of monster like this. Pulling up the blue interface, arranges his glasses, spot synchronization with Karstedt at 1%. Flares up in anger, questions why something so important will be written this tiny. With a smile tells him there's more to the saga and he should get out and make a name for himself, while introducing himself as Bjorn. Focuses on the battle all-handed with only 1% of Karstedt power, admits the 1% is more than enough to deal with a monster like this. As Karstedt was an elite fighter that could take on hundreds of soldiers alone. Positioned in a fighting position, the monster dashing towards him, manages to dodge the hit, recalls one of the skills Karstedt used called Tempest. Eyes blazing dashes with incredible speed finishes up the monster, crashing face down as he couldn't control his speed. Getting himself, wows at the fact a new saga was added because he recalled the accomplishments, as that ability was a movements buff. Rising up with his sword, decides to take on the remaining monsters using the saga. Everyone celebrates the battle won. Teiho with food stuffed up in his mouth, complains on how they only serve meat and alcohol. Before he can complain some more, Bjorn sits in front of him informing him if he wants to feast on something better, he should increase his rank as a warrior. Explaining that this is a banquet for low-ranking warriors, that's why the food and drink are like this, prompting Teiho to question if Bjorn is a low-rank warrior. Laughing lets Teiho know he's just stopping by to pay him a visit. Teiho thanks him for the help earlier as he if hadn't told him about the saga he would have died. Realizing what he said asks Bjorn what happens if one dies in Valhalla. With a smile Bjorn informs him that the soul will be transferred into a steel warrior, not feeling pain or hunger but gets to fight forever. Hearing the explanation Teiho screams out in terror, sweat tickling down shouts on how that's a coffin, telling himself he can't absolutely die here. Bjorn lets him know he will be transferred to a faction soon. Just then a lady clouded in golden armor steps forward, calls to the attention of the men, lets them know they will be assigned to a faction. Looking over notices she's a Valkyrie, as Bjorn explains, she's one of Odin's daughter, Reginleif, born of noble blood. Lifting up her sword informs the warriors to look into their cups as the name of the divine lord they will serve will be revealed to them. Bjorn tells him they all belong to army of Asgard's god and goddess. The ones they serve grants them strength. Looking into his mug as light shines inside it prays to be assigned to either Odin or Thor. Teiho drifting in a lake with a lady with red hair, sitting face to her grabs his head as he wonders if this wasn't supposed to be an army, then why is he alone? The lady tries her best to calm him down, explaining their faction has some perks, as they don't answer to anyone and there aren't to make his life difficult. Hearing that stood up in shock as he questions if he's really the only one in Idun's army. Flashback to the day of assigning factions. Taeho looking inside his mug sees he has been assigned to the Idun faction. While others celebrates getting assigned to Odin and Thor faction, Taeho looks over to Bjorn, whom looks back at him with pitiful face and wishes him good luck. A roll call was made, as warriors lines up according to their faction to be picked up by their respective faction Valkyrie. The red-haired Valkyrie squatted picking her ears calls out for the Idun faction, opens her eyes to see Taeho walking towards, all excited rushes towards him as it's been years Idun faction got their last recruit. Back on the boat, Taeho refers to the Valkyrie as Heda, asks her the reason for the fights happening. Heda uses her powers to materialize a tree with various light and symbols, explains they're in Asgard, across from them is Muspelheim, the land all giants, evil spirit and demon comes from. Taeho points at a red spot on the tree Heda materialized, asks her what's it about, which she explains it's a place called Erin, but it has already been destroyed and now they're at the forefronts. Docking on shore as Heda explains they've arrived at the goddess's temple, as one of her warriors he has to introduce himself. Enters the temple, stands in front of a giant statue with 4 wings, and a crescent symbol of a tree on the floor. Heda materializes a golden apple, hands it over to Taeho. As he stands inside the crescent symbol, drops the golden apple on the symbol. A blinding golden light shone over the room, as the goddess materializes calling Taeho to step forward, sees the goddess knelt down as the goddess grants him her blessings. The blessing crest of light will protect his body from the threat of death. Feeling the blessing coursing through him, stands up in excitement as his back pain, indigestion and other issues he once had have been cured. With a smile the goddess says to him she will be expecting great things from him, returning him to reality. Heda explains he can experience pain comparable to death, but he really never dies. Taeho lying there could only wonder how pretty the Valkyrie is. Looking up at her asks if he can return to his old life once all the enemies are defeated. Helping him up lets him know if they win he can return to his old life. Standing close to the Valkyrie, blushing all over, comments on how staying here for now won't hurt. Taeho complains on how bad the food is. Heda advises him to work hard and increase his rank, as he will be receiving better treatment and lodging as we get a clear view of his room, covered in webs and looking shabby. With a cheerful smile encourages him to do his best, as he imagines his life with her and their child playing beside a riverside. Coming outside, Heda explains every time he kills a monster he receives something called a rune. Taeho recalls absorbing some red essence when he defeated the monster earlier. A trigam seal was formed on his chest representing strength, agility, stamina, mana and willpower, which he can use the runes he gets to upgrade his desired stats. Flames surrounds her as she explains more about Saga, as Saga is a materialization of legends as he can transform or even summon an entire army. Conjuring a flame sword lets Taeho know drawing out the power of Saga and developing it all depends on him. Before continuing their lesson, a large ringing sound was heard informing them of the approaching war. Heda dresses Taeho up in battle armor as he looks uncomfortable in it. Before leaving looks back at Heda telling him not to die, which he lets her know he can't die that easily thanks to Idun's blessing. Arriving at the battlefield was hit at the back by Bjorn, cheerful admitting they met again. With a mischievous asks Taeho he must have a beautiful Valkyrie manager. Laughs madly, informs Taeho stand with his comrades as they have a commander this time around unlike yesterday. The commander introduces himself as Ragnall from the Heimdall army, as he leads them to the battlefield through a portal as the warriors chants his name. Arriving at the battlefield, fight broke out between the warriors and monsters. In the middle of the fight, a giant wolf was spotted with a large hammer. Jumps in the midst of the warriors. With one swing so many soldiers were thrown off their feet, just as Taeho arrives at the battlefield cursing whoever that opened the portal there. Drawing out his sword and shield, sees the damage caused by monster. Drops his shield as it can't handle the monster's attack. Decides to take all his runes and apply them on agility. With that he dodges the monster first attack. Decides to go for the monster's leg, but on seeing how the monster swats away the other warriors he decides to target a different spot. Using the Tempest skill leaps into the air, avoiding the monster's attack. At the moment he recalls Heda's advice on how drawing the power of the saga is entirely up to him, with a dedication to see Heda again. Kicks off the air, launching himself towards the monster, stabbing it on the head. The monster screams out in pain, letting go of its weapon. Using this opportunity materializes a sword using his saga and finishes off the monster.